After 11 years of no playoffs and 10 years of losing, it causes all Angel fans to ask this question. Why do we still root for this team?
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I guess we like to suffer. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. After being eliminated from the playoff chase, we're discussing why we're still Halo fans, because here we are, and here you are, and we're all here together. Mike Trout told Sam Blum he knows who he is, and he shared how he's going to find the GOAT again, and is Bryce Teodosio the difference maker in the Angels lineup that's filled with power and nothing else. Before we talk about the Angels, let's talk about our sponsor, FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is Jon, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother Jon.
Hey, we're talking Angels baseball with you every single Monday through Friday, every single weekday, right here on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, on TV, wherever you're watching us. We've been lifelong fans of this team. We've been talking about the Angels here now 4 years on Locked On Angels, and we're happy to have you with us. We're getting into our conversation, Mike. As we know, the Angels are eliminated from the playoffs once again. It didn't come as a surprise after they lost to the Mariners on Sunday. We kind of knew that this would be the case this season, didn't we?
Yeah. Now, I said to start the season, I think that the best this team could do was 500 at best, right? And then you shared a compelling case. They got rid of really terrible players and replaced them with better players. You gave us a really good case on how they could make the playoffs. You never said they would make the playoffs.
Oh, no, I said they would. I doubled down. I tripled down. I'm not afraid to say it. I'm not afraid to say it. Right. I said that they would make the playoffs because they shoulda, they coulda, and all the question was woulda, and the woulda did not take place.
Nope, not at all. Now, overall, Jon, this team is a better team if you look at the record and you run past them at about 20 miles an hour, right? Last year was really bad. This year, they're a little bit better, but the losing does continue. It's now 10 straight years of finishing under 500. The last time the Halos finished at or above 500 was 2015. They went 85-77 that season. Oh, the days of finishing over 500 and being disappointed.
And they were that close.
Yeah.
Too. I think it came down to a series against the Rangers, or it was a game the Rangers played. Like, they needed to lose and the Angels needed to win. And yeah, I think it came down to game 162 that year too.
Yeah. Last time they made the playoffs 11 years ago, 2014, they went 98-64 that season. Were swept in the first round by the Kansas City Royals. And the last time the Halos were at or near 500 at the end of the year was 2017 and 2018. They went 80-82. Isn't it crazy that we would long for an 80-82 season? That's probably what we kind of longed for this season. Now, this is the longest stretch of losing in Halo history, a longest stretch of losing seasons. Prior to this 10-year run, Jon, the Halos went 7 years, way back in 1971 to 1977. Then in 1978, they finished 87-75. The following year, 1979, they made the playoffs for the first time in franchise history with an 88-74 record. Jon, the longest playoff drought in baseball right now of all the teams, the longest losing stretch in Angel history amongst all of the owners. There's been 3, right? And yet, hi, we're still here. You're still here, right?
Right.
So talk to me. Talk to the everydayers. Why do we stay? Let's start there.
Why do we stay? Because this is what baseball and sports in general is all about. The fact that teams have their highest of highs and they have the lowest of lows. Mike, in franchise history, based on the numbers you gave us, this is the lowest of lows. Now, I know that there were teams that, it was hard to watch, in those 70s and through the 80s. And then there were some, playoff runs where it was like, oh, they got in, and then they were disappointed, right? And things like that. But the fact is, and even the 90s teams, right? Like, not easy to watch those teams, but that's the team you grew up with and you grew up loving. And it certainly paid off in 2002 when they won it all. And then they were good for the next, 10 years. And then if you want to count 2014 as part of that, about 10 years there where they were pretty darn good. But in all of sports, there are the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. You'd hope that once you made it into the playoffs the way that the Angels had in the 2000s, that there would be sustainability in that they could get back there quickly, even if they had a couple of bad seasons. Maybe that's kind of what we all expected after 2014 was 2015. They were right there, 2016, 17, 18. They'll get back to it. But it really comes down to bad decision-making, bad player development, bad scouting. There's just 10 years of all of that stuff. And we're just now starting to see that turn around. And you know what's unfortunate? We can get excited about guys like Denzer Guzman. I read a great article from Jeff Fletcher just yesterday about the pitching that's coming up through the system. And a lot of these guys could be great for the Angels. And there was a scout who even said some really nice things about the likes of Caden Dana and what kind of pitcher he could be, you know, more toward the front of a rotation as opposed to a 3 to 5. But they're still years away. And not Dana specifically, but some of the guys they got in international free agency, they're still years away. You think Nelson Rada, right? He's still maybe a year or two away at this point. And so the help is on the way. The things are coming, but those are the things we said about guys back in 2018. Oh, the help's on the way. Jeremiah Jackson, one of the guys that was traded from the Angels to the Mets.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's on the Orioles. It wasn't a straight trade. At first, I thought it was a straight direct trade to the Orioles, but that was a mistake on my part. They traded Jeremiah Jackson to the Mets so they could get Dominic Leone, right, for their quote-unquote playoff push in 2023. He's just now coming around.
Yeah.
And he's somebody that we've talked about for years before he was traded out of the system. And I'd kind of given up on him because he was kind of one of those Billy Epler guys that didn't always seem to pan out. But I say this because this is where the Angels are at now in terms of sports, really. The highs, and the lows, right? And you and I as 49er fans, well, good grief, how many years of bad 49er football did we have to watch before, you know, Jim Harbaugh got hired, and then Colin Kaepernick was kind of came out of nowhere, right? And even then, Alex Smith was not that bad of a quarterback. He could have led them to the playoffs, and he got hurt, and then they gave Kaepernick the job. And then after Harbaugh was gone and Kaepernick wasn't so good anymore, it took about 5 more years for them to start making playoff runs again. And so to me, it's just the nature of sports, and it doesn't just extend to baseball. I think it's longer in baseball because it's harder to get back to the postseason as a baseball team compared to maybe football or the NHL or NBA. I could be speaking totally out of turn, but in my opinion, I think the baseball is one of the harder sports to reach the playoffs. So to me, when you say, why are you still here? You've said it before. I can't turn it off. Yeah. I'm not gonna switch loyalties, right? I'm not gonna bandwagon some other team. Will I watch other teams and enjoy and root for them? Sure. When the Rangers and the Diamondbacks got into the World Series in 2023, I wasn't upset at all that it was an AL West rival in the World Series, especially the Rangers, because they're probably the least offensive fan base out there. But to me, I'm excited to see new teams in the playoffs. I'm excited to see new teams get those opportunities. When the Astros were young and before the cheating scandal and they got into the postseason, I think for the first time in 2015, it was like, hey, they're a fun team to watch. Like, this is kind of cool. So I enjoy baseball. I enjoy seeing other teams that aren't always there making it, like, you know, the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Dodgers. I enjoy seeing teams other than that get into the postseason. And as far as the Angels go, I'm not going to switch loyalties. I'm just going to enjoy baseball. And I also know that a lot of things need to change. And I know that things will change eventually. We all know what needs to change.
Yeah.
We've all discussed it. Our everydayers know what needs to change. It starts at the top. And until that change takes place, I'm just going to ride with my team. I'm going to ride with the players that I really enjoy on this team and know that change will eventually come. And I'm not going to be caught, you know, with my socks wet and no shoes on when the change happens and the Angels are good again. And then people say, well, John, weren't you rooting for San Diego there for a while? Like, I'm not going to do that. People are going to go, man, Jon and Mike, they stuck with that team through so much crap, and here they are now. That's a lot to say. What about you? Why are you still here?
I really I really love the history that I have tied to this team. I think a part of it is sentimentality because of growing up watching the Angels and sitting at the stadium in 1993, watching the Angels play the Yankees, and the Yankees had Don Mattingly and Wade Boggs. And then on the Angels side, I can distinctly remember the game I was at when I first went, 13 years old. Joe Gray was the closer for the Angels, blew the lead, and it became the heartbreak of the day for me. Like, how could the Angels lose when I showed up to the stadium, right? And then from there, was able to start driving, and I got down there a lot more often. And then as I got older and became an adult, I was able to take my family. I was able to take you, and it was a blast. And so I have a lot of sentimentality tied to it. But when they started really putting together some good teams, that first run, like 1995, when they lost the lead to the Mariners, I loved that team. It was a heartbreak of a season, but I loved that team with Tony Phillips and Gary DiSarcina, and they lost DiSarcina that year, and that's where everything kind of fell apart. And then when they started to actually get to the 500 mark and start to win in the late 90s with Terry Collins as the manager, it just drew me in. I'm like, man, this team has got a lot of potential. Then when Soch got there, and then they had a lot of young guys, that's when I really fell in love with this team, probably 97, 98, 99, and really appreciated what the team was becoming. And then, of course, a good stretch run of wins over the course of the early 2000s. That drew me in, John. It sucked me in. Tractor beam sucked me right in. And that's where I really fell in love with this team. So it was more sentimentality. I think that keeps me tied to it. And I just don't like watching sports to watch sports. I love sports. I love baseball. I love football. I love college football. But I find myself, like, college football, I don't have a team. My daughter's boyfriend asked me the other day, like, what team do you root for? And I'm like, just pop it on because I love college football. It's a whole lot of fun, but I don't have any emotional investment in it. I really like having an emotional investment. That's why I love watching the Niners. That's why I love watching the Angels. And that's why I can't leave, because I can't go watch another team because I don't have an emotional investment. I don't have that story with my brother Jeff, who's in between Jon and I, where we went to the stadium when we first moved back from being out of state for a couple of years. We came back, we went to a game, we snuck down to the first base side, and it wasn't our seats, but we were at the first base side, and I got toasted, so sunburned, and so did Jeff, and we had a blast. It was so much fun. We missed 3 foul balls because they got taken away from us from other people who had gloves. We didn't bring our gloves. It was such an incredible time. I remember that distinctly, and that's why I continue to root for this team. There's memories tied to it. I'm invested. My heart's in it, and I just can't seem to turn it off. I can't seem to walk away from it. So as much as they suck and as much as they make me suffer, I'm still going to be here, and I'm still going to be rooting for them.
Whose wife did you accidentally sit next to one time?
Jim Edmonds' wife. Yep, Jim Edmonds' wife. It was a game I was at, looking through the binoculars, and she was sitting next to me, and I didn't realize who it was. She was talking about. She goes, who are you looking at? And I said, I'm looking at the players. I can't believe they're right there. I was a young kid, probably 12, 13 years old. And she goes, yeah, they're a good bunch of guys. And we ended up chatting, and I found out she was Jim Edmonds' wife. And because I was a shy 12-year-old kid, I did not take the opportunity to say, hey, maybe you could, like, take me down and meet the players, or I have cards, right? I didn't do any of that stuff because I was like, oh my gosh, Jim, you mean the guy that's playing center field right now? That guy? Oh my God. I freaked out and didn't know what to do. And then afterwards, I remember I got home and my dad went, you didn't ask her to, like, maybe take you down to the locker room or meet the players? And I was like, you can do that? I didn't know you could do that.
That's allowed? Look, I love everything that you said, and I hope that our everydayers agree. The fact is, and as I've said, and you've said many times, you can't turn it off. You can't switch it off. And the truth is, we started talking about this team as a podcast before we got to Locked On Angels 5 years ago, because you have a background in radio, and we both love this team so much. It was like, let's do a podcast together. Let's just do it for fun. And I also really appreciate the fact that, like, look where it's gotten us in terms of, we've got to meet players. We've got to meet the families of players. We've got to meet some incredible everydayers. And so in that sense, it's like, I have more incentive now to really enjoy this team and the potential that they have in the future. I love talking about this team. Yeah. I love talking about who's on the way. I love talking about, like, hey, you know what? Here's the issue that I can identify with Trout or Neto or Hoppy or whatever, Jack Honowitz on the mound, right? I love discussing that kind of stuff because it's our team. It's our guys. And yeah, I could do that for other teams and whatnot. But the fact is like, we got here and we got to have this together, and we get to appreciate our everydayers who are part of it each and every day too. So that's a huge aspect for me that keeps me attached to this team. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up, can Mike Trout ever be Mike Trout again? He seems to think so, and we'll tell you why in just a minute.
Everydayers, there's a lot of hair products out there, and it's hard to know which ones are actually going to do anything for thinning hair or losing your hair. That's why you got to give Nutrafol a closer look. They're the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement, and it's trusted by over 1.5 million people. And it's not just hype. This is the supplement that's clinically tested that targets the root cause of thinning and shedding with a proactive approach. Nutrafol is a simple add to your day. You just take 4 pills with a meal, no prescription needed, and you can feel good about knowing that Nutrafol is NSF certified and backed by a peer-reviewed study. Multiple peer-reviewed studies see thicker, stronger hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our Locked On Angel listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB.
And today's show is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. There's nothing like catching a game of baseball live. Sometimes getting tickets, though, that's the tough part. You've got queues, you got login screens, you got surprise fees. Takes all the fun out of it. And you know what's great? You can use Game Time for baseball games, hockey games, basketball games. You can use it for concerts. You can use it for a comedy show, so much more. It's the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all the fees are included. The price you see is the price you pay. Honestly, faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way there is to buy tickets out there. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. We'd love for you to do that. Again, terms apply. The promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can check us out wherever you get your podcasts. And whether you're watching or listening, get into the conversation today. Come on over to YouTube, get in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts about what we're talking about. Why are you still here? Why do you still root for this team? What are the stories you have? That's all we got, friends. That's all we have. Let's just talk about that, right? You can also join us on social media or DM us at Locked On Angels on Twitter or Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram with your thoughts on today's discussion.
My first favorite player, JT Snow. And the only reason is because he was a lefty like me.
Yep.
I'm not even sure that I knew who he was, but you told me he was left-handed, and I was like, I like that guy.
I'm in. That's
First
it.
base, first baseman. I love that guy.
Yep.
Mike, remember earlier this season, and I think it was preseason actually, when MLB Network had their player rankings and they ranked Trout as the game's 39th best player in baseball.
Yeah.
Trout saw it and said, I know where I stand. And because they asked him, hey, what do you think about that? That's not as high as you used to be. And he's like, I know where I stand. Well, Sam Blum mentioned this in a recent article for The Athletic. 7 months later, Trout is worth just 1 win above replacement, or WAR. That's good for 12th on the team. At the time of the writing, he's striking out at a 30.8% clip, far worse than his career average of 23.2%. Trout, his ability to take pitches out of the zone has fallen off dramatically. He's making contact on just 44.3% of those swings of pitches outside the zone, compared to years past, where for his career, it's 58.8%. So he's getting to those pitches outside the zone and at least making contact on those. Now, pitchers, as you and I know, have always tried to attack Trout up and in the zone, and now they're seeing him whiff there at a much, much higher rate. Previously on our show, we discussed how he was struggling with that, and we could trust him to make the adjustment. And I think the very next day in Baltimore, he made that adjustment, and we were like, yeah, let's go, Trout. But the problem is, since July 18th, Trout has struck out 37.1% of the time.
Wow. And
it's not been a good year, according to Trout standards. We all know what he's capable of, and we all know that he can do so much better. And so for all of those numbers, for all those bad numbers to be up, that's not great. Now,
Yeah.
how does Trout feel about Trout right now?
Well, Trout said that I've got 5 more years on my contract. That's what fuels me. I feel like I've got a lot left in the tank, and I know when it's right, and I know when I'm right, and I can be the best, and I know how to prepare. But his struggles and the injuries have presented a lot of long-term questions, right, John? Like, should they move him down in the order? Should they move him up in the order? They finally put him at leadoff, which is something that you and I have been clamoring for. Should he play the field at all? Ray Montgomery gave kind of a no answer. He said he's still productive. He's not the MVP from 10 years ago, but he's still productive. And that's all he kind of really said. Trout said, it's been a frustrating year for me mentally, physically, but I feel like I can get back to myself. I've got the fire in me. And here's where he says he can get back to being the GOAT. To work hard this offseason to be who I was in the previous season. So, Johnny, here we are, the end of 2025. He's played the most games he's played since 2019. So what do you do with Mike Trout in the offseason? And what do you do with Mike Trout in 2026?
You know, Mike, sometimes in life, if you don't make a decision, the decision is going to be made for you. And I think we kind of saw that with Trout this year, right? We talked a lot this offseason about, hey, he's going to move out of center field. Should he move out of center field? And then in spring training, we found out, yeah, he's going to be in right field. And that's the way it started. And, you know, to be fair, he had a somewhat productive season to start this year. Remember, the average wasn't great, but the slugging was up. The on-base percentage was up. He was ripping home runs to start the season. Then he hurt his knee running down the line. And when he came back, he just hasn't been the same. Right. And obviously the home run production fell off. With as much as this team emphasizes home run production, certainly Trout has not been a huge part of that, with only 21 on the season as of this recording. But I go back to my original statement of, when you don't make a decision, someone is going to make it for you, or it's going to be made for you. Mike, I think Mike Trout is at that point of the career where he's got a DH full time. I think that, considering what happened to him, I know he was hurt running the bases, and he hurt his knee, same knee that had the issues last year. I think he's got a DH full time. I think at this point, if you can mitigate anything that's going to prevent you from getting hurt, and that includes the outfield. I know he loves playing the outfield. I know he's probably a more productive player when he plays the outfield. But the truth is, there's too much risk involved. There's too much risk to his body, too much risk to the injuries he's already had, and better for him to be in the lineup at all than to not be in the lineup because he's hurt and on the injured list, which is what we've had in 24 and 23 and 22 and 21, right? And there was a point earlier this season, I think before it started, where you and I said, hey, some Trout is better than no Trout.
Right.
And there are times this season where you and I have been so frustrated that it's like, maybe no Trout is better than some Trout, because there have been some frustrating points of the season, right? But honestly, I would attribute all the struggles that he's had so far to the knee issue that's hurt him at the dish. It's hurt him in terms of power. It's hurt him in terms of batting average. It's hurt him in terms of being able to make contact on those pitches outside the zone, because 1, you'll either foul it off, or 2, you'll either go the other way with it. His timing is super behind, as we witnessed in that Mariners series. And I think it has a lot to do with the way he loads in his swing. I think it has a lot to do with how quickly he can perform his swing. And so lingering injuries, he mentioned it. It's been a frustrating year for me mentally and physically. Physically is a huge part of it. If you're uncomfortable, you know, we talk about like, a knee injury, but when your knees suck, then it's almost like everything upward past your knees also hurts, right? You don't know how it affects your back. You don't know how it affects other parts of your body, especially as a baseball player. When one thing goes wrong, and especially when it's such a pivotal part of your body, like your knee, that's going to hurt other things as well. And so all of these issues are connected. I think that what he needs to do, put in the work in the offseason, but also heal up, and then don't risk hurting yourself again. And the Angels have to mitigate that at every possible opportunity. Again, if you don't make the decision, it's going to be made for you. And I think we're at that point with Mike Trout. I think the decision has to be made for him, and that's full-time DH. What do you think he needs to do to get back to being Mike Trout again?
So this all is a preface with like, hey, the Angels, do we count on the Angels doing the right thing? Do we count on the Angels knowing what the right thing is? Do we count on the Angels having a strategy? So all of this is prefaced on that they kind of know what they're doing, or at least know what they're doing. So laugh at me all you want. But if I'm in charge, if I'm in charge, here's what I do. This offseason, Mike, I want you to heal your body, get your body in really good shape, and I want you to work on your swing. And those are the two things that I want you to work on. We're not going to have you in the outfield next year. You're not somebody that has earned the right to be able to dictate where you're going to be in the lineup or where you're going to be in the outfield. I get that you're Mike Trout. I get that you're the GOAT, and you did great for us. Thank you for that. But now you're at a place where I have to link arms with you and say, this is what I need you to do to help this team right now. And the best thing that he can do for this team is to be a DH and maybe an occasional outfielder, maybe like Jorge Soler, right? And then when he comes into 2026, I'm going to tell him where I'm putting him in the lineup. Probably going to have him lead off because I think that's probably the best place for him to be. I think he still runs the bases well. I think he's going to still draw walks well. He's got a good eye for the batter's box. And so I'm going to put him there. And I think it's just time for him to listen and receive instead of telling me what he wants. Now, he seems like a humble guy, seems like a guy that doesn't really dictate that. I don't know the inner workings of the specific conversations that they're having. If I'm in charge, what I'm saying to Trout is this offseason, work on your swing. I want your body to be in the best shape it's ever been, best shape of your life, right? And then when you come into 2026, I'm telling you that this is what we're doing, which is probably why we'll see Ron Washington next year, because Ron is going to have that authority to be able to say, I'm putting Trout here and I want Trout to do this. Now, with a caveat, Ron Washington is also the kind of guy that's like, what would you like to do? I would love for you because you're great, right? And so I get that there's a lot of factors in this, but that's what I would do if I was in charge of Mike Trout.
I don't know. I feel like Torrey Hunter's got that sway in Mike Trout's life too, so I think that could be an option.
Agreed.
As well. But no matter who's in charge, Mike, I think that you're right. I think that needs to be said, and I think that's what needs to be done. And at least Trout, we know, will put in the work. We know that he's not going to, take the offseason off and not show up and then go, oh, it's the day before spring training. By the way, guys, my pinky toe is hurting me, so I can't show up. So at least we know that Trout is dedicated and he's going to be able to be there come springtime.
Everydayers, you got to check out FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in as the action is unfolding live. FanDuel is quick, it's easy, and it's the best way to add a little more energy to Sunday. So I know you're ready to play, so download the FanDuel app right now. You can visit FanDuel.com to get started. Again, FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
Has Bryce Teodosio played his way into a role for 2026? Well, we don't know because the Angels have not said, and as we often say, and they have often said, we haven't thought that far ahead.
Right. Yeah.
And so it is worth having this discussion because one thing they have discussed is Bryce Teodosio's ability to put down the bunt and use the bunt as an offensive weapon. Most people will poo-poo, if you will, on the bunt because it's often considered an automatic out. But in the hands of Bryce Teodosio, I almost said Bryce Harper. I wish. In the hands of Bryce Teodosio, it can be an offensive weapon because it creates something on the bases. And that's actually what he said himself. I've been working on it really hard every day to help create something on the bases. He's been working 10 to 15 minutes a day on bunting with first base coach Eric Young Sr. as his primary tutor. And right now, Teodosio, as of this recording, has a .579 on base plus slugging percentage. And the belief is bunting could make him more of an offensive threat in a lineup with lots and lots of power. Right, Mike?
Yeah, so how much more production and more productive can Teodosio be by simply becoming a more proficient bunter? Well, here's some stats. Since 2008, there have been 21 instances of players getting at least 15 bunt hits a season. By the way, Brett Butler is a former Dodger, former Giant, Hall of Famer, great player. That guy would bunt almost every time and would get on base. What a threat he was. Late 80s, early 90s, right? In recent history, though, Angel history, the most successful bunters on the team were Eric Ibar, had 3 hits at least, had 3 times where he had at least 15 bunts. And then Peter Borges, who had 17 bunt hits in 2011. In 2009, Ibar had a 529 average on 46 bunts, and that doesn't include the 12 times he was credited with a sacrifice. He hit 296 when he didn't bunt, but his overall average was 312, which indicated that from bunting, he had a 16-point gain. And then Peter Borges raised his average 18 points by hitting 548 on his bunts in 2011. The Angels believe that the benefit is even bigger than that, because a player who bunts will sometimes cause havoc on the base pass and on the defense. There's going to be errors. Sometimes they'll get an extra base. Teodosio said, the more comfortable that I get with this, I definitely, it'll help me at the plate. I'll bring in the third baseman. It gives me more hits to that side of the field. And with my speed, if I'm able to get down and get into the right spot, there's nobody that's going to be able to throw me out. Again, Teodosio said it's a good weapon. It's definitely something that I want to have in my toolbox. So, Johnny, bunting can cause chaos. Wow, there's a concept, right?
Surprise.
Will the Angels have a strategy to allow for Teodosio to cause chaos? Because they haven't done it much this season.
Yeah. Well, and the times that he has, there's been a bunt and then an error over to first base and allowed him to get on second. And then, anybody else's double, Teodosio legs it out for a triple, right? And so that's the benefit of having a speedster on this team. Is he a good leadoff guy? Not necessarily, because the on base percentage needs to come up, and he doesn't hit for average all the time. But I do think he's got that baby clutch gene, I guess you could say, because he has come through in some significant moments where he'll get a bloop single to drop in and he'll be able to score somebody, and then he can take the extra base. Mike, you bringing it back though to bunting and the Angels and the whole idea of small ball. Look, if Johnny Washington is on this team as the hitting coach next year, it's not going to go the way that it probably should. Yeah. Right. And that's because everybody here has the one track mind of, when you find your pitch, you got to get your pitch, you got to end that at bat. And there's no flexibility. There's no ability to, take what the pitcher is throwing at you and do something with it, right? That's the mentality they should have, rather than wait for that pitcher to serve you up a cookie and then do something with it. It's not going to happen. Yeah. And every now and then you have a player like Teodosio who kind of falls into your lap and you go, hey, that guy's got a bunt. Hey, we need him to steal some bags. But that's not always the way that it goes. In fact, if you go back 1 year to when Ron Washington got here, you saw a lot more players on the move. You saw Joe Adele stealing bags. You saw Rengifo steal bags. You saw Neto. To be fair, Neto has stolen as many bags as last year. But all of that to say, sometimes you got to tell these guys what to do and make it your strategy versus, what we should do with Teodosio? We should make him put the bunt down. Now that if you could combine those two factors and actually, have some sacrifice bunts every now and then and do that, but also you have Teodosio who could get a bunt single and cause that to be an error. I think that's a huge bonus. It's just that I don't think that the Angels, as they currently stand, and I mean that in coaching wise, are going to take advantage of that. Sure, they've let Teodosio put the bunt down, but they've also taken him out of the game, Mike, to put in a guy who can swing for the fences, whether that's Matthew Lugo just the other day or Luis Rengifo, right? They always swap him out at those times when it's like, man, give the guy a chance. Like, I know he's not going to hit a home run right here, but I bet you $1 million if he puts the bunt down, he's going to cause something to happen and help you score that run that you're trying to drive in anyway. So as the Angels currently stand, I think they have a great tool in Bryce Teodosio. The Angels of last year would have probably utilized him more, but this year, not quite the same. And I'm not confident that they would do that if the coaching staff stays as it is. But I got to tell you, Mike, I don't think it's going to stay as it is. If I had to be a gambling man, right? I don't think things are going to stay the same. I think we're going to see some significant changes once the end of the season gets here.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night until the World Series champion is crowned. You're going to get local analysis on a national scale. You can find Game Night on Locked On MLB's YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, be sure you give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Again, whether you're watching or listening, come on over to today's show and get in the comment section on YouTube. Hit that like and subscribe button to really help us out and put us in front of other loyal, longtime Angel fans. Or maybe you're a new fan and you're still just as loyal because you're sticking with this team. Let's go. All right, Mike, what do we have on deck for Wednesday's show?
Johnny, what will the Angels front office say about this season after this season? Well, Johnny and I are going to share with you what we believe the Angels will say, and then we're going to share with you what we would say tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
What time does the unemployment office open? That's what they're going to say. If we have our way. All right, friends. We hope you'll come back and join us for that. Until then, my name is Jon, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother Jon.
Thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you back here on Wednesday.
Here's what the Angels are saying. Yeah, Perry figured it out.
Perry figured it out.